Welcome to this A-Level Business Explainer. Today, we're popping the hood of a business to really understand its true engine room, managing operations. Whether you're gearing up to absolutely master AQA Topic 3.2.2 for your exams, or you just want to figure out how the world's most successful companies actually function on a day-to-day basis, well, you are in exactly the right place. Okay, let's take a quick look at our agenda for today's masterclass. We're going to cover the transformation process, key operations objectives, strategic influences, operations location, and finally, we'll wrap up by mastering those all-important synoptic links.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the transformation process.
So the absolute crucial thing to understand here is that operations is the physical or virtual space where the magic of adding value actually happens. It's all about taking basic resources, things that honestly might not be worth all that much on their own, and turning them into something customers will gladly pay a premium for. If operations fails to add value, the business simply cannot survive. It's really that simple.
Every single transformation process follows a very strict flow. We always start with inputs, so think materials, labor, and capital. They then go through a transformation process, like manufacturing a product or providing a service, to create outputs. And those outputs are your finished goods and ultimately customer satisfaction. Literally, every operational decision a manager makes is about optimizing this exact sequence to ensure maximum efficiency, minimal waste, and the absolute highest possible quality.
Moving right along to Section 2, Key Operations Objectives. Now that we've got our engine, we need to tune it. Operations objectives are basically your key performance indicators. They give a business a crystal clear, measurable target. We're talking about efficiency, like maximizing capacity utilization and lean production. We're obsessing over quality, mainly to avoid the totally crippling costs of poor quality and returns. We obviously need to manage the sheer volume of goods. But increasingly, we're also focusing heavily on flexibility and environmental impact. This means exploring concepts like circularity, sustainable sourcing, and actively reducing the firm's carbon footprint. Okay, it is time for our first active task in this masterclass. This is an AO3 analysis task. What I want you to do is build a logical chain of reasoning regarding flexibility. Specifically, how does a strategic focus on matching output to fluctuating cyclical or seasonal demand actually impact a firm's unit costs and ultimately its long-term competitiveness? Teachers, this is a great time to pause the explainer so your students can map out their logical steps connecting flexibility to competitiveness. Try to get at least 4 clearly connected analytical steps in there. All right, let's see how this builds into a really top-tier AO3 response. A strategic focus on flexibility allows for an incredibly swift response to volume or product mix changes, maybe by using flexible employment or outsourcing. This agility means the business entirely avoids the massive, frankly unnecessary costs of holding unsold excess inventory, which directly drives down unit costs. Finally, those lower costs can then be passed on as lower prices to the consumer, securing a massive long-term competitive advantage. Now that is a tight, highly logical chain of reasoning. Next up, Section 3, Strategic Influences on Competitiveness. So what actually influences these objectives? Because operations certainly don't exist in a vacuum, right? An agile business has to constantly balance its internal capabilities with completely external market conditions. Internally, your objectives are constrained by things like available finance, the current skill level of your workforce, and the deeply established corporate culture. But externally, the business is completely at the mercy of economic growth cycles, massive demographic shifts, and rapid technological changes. Speaking of technology, disruptive technologies radically alter these operations objectives. Incorporating artificial intelligence into inventory management or heavily automating your production lines can dramatically improve your speed of response and relentlessly push down unit costs. Honestly, this is often the primary way a modern business beats out its rivals today. Technology isn't just a handy tool anymore. It is a fundamental strategic influence on competitiveness.
Let's move into Section 4, choosing an operations location.
So where exactly should we place this operational engine? Selecting a location is an incredibly complex calculation. It's way more than just finding an empty building with a for lease sign. Managers have to weigh hard, cold financial metrics like expected return on investment, overall costs, and infrastructure against softer but equally critical ethical, people, and environmental considerations. For example, should you really locate in a region with cheaper labor if it totally compromises your ethical commitments or significantly jacks up your carbon footprint because of transport? Here is your AO2 application task. We're going to look at a fictional business called Far More Cycles. They are facing a major strategic shift, and they're currently considering a brand new urban retail location. You need to prioritize their operations objectives based entirely on their specific context. To do this properly, you must apply your knowledge to this exact data context. Far More Cycles is a worker cooperative. They deeply value democracy, employee rewards, and social responsibility above almost everything. But here's the catch. They are currently bleeding revenue while still holding on to very high employee costs compared to the industry average. Furthermore, their digital marketing spend is worryingly low. Teachers, please pause the explainer here. Students, you need to figure out which location factors matter most to a democratic cooperative that is currently in pretty serious financial distress. What absolutely has to be the priority? Okay, let's step right up to AO4 evaluation using that exact same scenario. This requires you to make a fully justified judgment. This is the highest level of analysis, and it's just a fantastic opportunity to really flex your strategic thinking. You need to weigh up the cold financial necessity of survival against the business's core ethical values. It's a brutal balancing act, really. On one side, you have financial viability, hitting break-even, ensuring return on investment, and just pure survival in a fiercely competitive market. On the exact opposite side, you have Far More's ethical and environmental commitments, protecting their highly paid cooperative workers and minimizing their carbon footprint. Think about it. If Far More strictly minimizes costs by moving to a cheaper, far less ethical location, do they betray their entire cooperative culture? Or is financial survival a necessary prerequisite for doing any social good at all? Teachers, this is a perfect moment to pause for a classroom debate. Force a decision on which priority must take the lead for Far More Cycles and exactly why. And finally, Section 5, Mastering Synoptic Links. Welcome back. Let's look at the ripple effect across different functional areas. Imagine operations adopts lean production. Instantly, human resources is affected. They now have to implement Kaizen training to build this new agile continuous improvement culture. This operational shift then lowers unit costs, which absolutely thrills the finance department because it massively boosts profit margins. And finally, those lower costs give marketing the sheer power to execute an aggressive, low-cost positioning strategy out there in the marketplace. Literally, everything is connected. Just think about the fast fashion giant Shein, straight from our AQA source materials. Their entire low-price marketing strategy is completely reliant on their ultra-lean operations. They use Kaizen and just-in-time inventory to keep their holding costs near absolute zero. This allows them to offer incredibly low prices and just dominate market share. However, because they hold so little inventory, they take on a huge operational risk, the very real threat of severe stockouts if there is a sudden, unexpected surge in fashion demand. Their operational efficiency is the absolute bedrock of their market competitiveness, for better and for worse. We have covered incredible ground today, from the nuts and bolts of the transformation process to the really complex trade-offs of location strategy. I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away. If the operations engine room fails, if efficiency just drops and quality completely plummets, can the most brilliant marketing campaign or the absolute happiest HR workforce actually save the business? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep thinking synoptically.